Oh, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, Tim, I've got your recording.
Thank you for not asking me if I'm interested in a dog.
I would think that you would come to me if that were the case. If there's anything that you would need from Lions, let me know, because we can do things for you.
West Point, Indiana?
Yes.
Oh,
Does it matter if there's one in
It
Lafayette?
doesn't matter. Nope. We just did we had a student, there was a student at Benton Elementary that was having a very difficult time singing. We paid for them to go to Dr. Yoka and watch them, and also watch them prepare classes. And Dr. Yoka was very surprised at how bad their eyes were and couldn't understand how they were getting anything out of school. Because this was a little girl she had nothing before. So, yeah, we're always willing to reach out and help anybody in the community.
I don't know what other services you provide besides dogs and glasses.
There's a lot of different things that we do, but if there's something, if you were to come and say, you know, I need a new cane, I need this, come to us. We'll
Just order a fan protect. You know?
I'm gonna go ahead and call this meeting to order. It's 6:13 on September the 17th. I appreciate you guys coming to tonight's meeting. It's my understanding that there's been a few people that didn't get the email about the reminder. So we're gonna work on that to be able to get that information out to everybody. So you know about the meeting well ahead of time. Know what's going to be on the agenda. I know that there's a couple of people that were not going to be here, so again, so welcome everybody. I'll start introductions. My name is Tim Clark, the Facilities, ADA, and Title VI Coordinator for the City of West Lafayette.
David Mills, Principal Consultant, ADA Consulting of Indiana, consultant with the city and the county.
Dennis Manning.
Manning's Munchies.
Yeah, I should have did that push, yeah.
We want to get the advertising in there.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks.
I'm Melissa Wapshaw, call me Mel, I'm just a citizen, not just.
Kevin Wapshaw, citizen, Lafayette.
Paula Bennett, ADA Coordinator, Commissioner's Assistant for Tippecanoe County.
Steve Clark Jr. I work at Oscar with Wishies.
That's the Mon, City of West Lafayette, ADA Captain.
She's in charge. She doesn't want to talk. So tonight, basically what we wanted to go over is, you know, obviously we talked about this before. Dennis, you weren't here at the last meeting, but the ACT is the Accessibility Coalition of Tippecanoe County. Is the acronym that we came up with, so we're calling ourselves the ACT group. And one of the things that I was hoping that we might be able to do briefly tonight is, not that we'll have it done tonight, but I think that we all need to think about what our mission statement is going to be for the ACT group. Come up with, you know, a couple of sentences. I'll write a few things up. We'll send out some emails, and, you know, all the people that kind of respond to those emails to come back and say, you know, let's change the wording here, let's change the wording there. But I believe that we need to have some type of a mission statement on what this group is going to be doing. So the second thing on the list is the advocacy group itself, is the training side of things. And on the agenda, what I have is, you know, under training is what, why, who, and what our goal is. The one side of it is it's a group of citizens and municipality workers coming together to make it a better place for our community, in our community, for our citizens. The why is to conform with the Department of Justice requirements and all their standards. Who is us, the communities, in DOT, Indiana Department of Transportation, the municipalities, obviously, and then the most important thing is the citizens. And our goal is to work together on setting standards throughout Greater Lafayette, to work together to make, understand what the issues are out there and how can we correct those issues. And then the last thing is the display, the window display for our sticker program. that is really the goal of what this is all about, and how can we do this. Tonight was really gonna be about training and things to look for when it comes to parking, path of travel, ramps, curbs. From there, I'm gonna let David Munoz talk a little bit about what he's put together on like a 6-slide presentation.
Yeah, I didn't want to inundate you guys with too much information. It's technical, but all of this information is very technical. You know, they put this information together in a book. We've got 2010 standards issued by the Department of Justice, and it's really broken up into 2 segments. One is scoping. When and where is the drinking fountain required? And then the second part of the book is technical requirements. When a drinking fountain is required, how high do we install it? So there's 2 segments to the technical, to the 2010 standards and guidelines that we have to use for the building environment. And what we have for the group is we have a checklist that we want everyone to take with them when they look at a facility and they feel like they've got an issue with the facility. This is a checklist to take with you. It's not a complete, exhaustive list that's going to tell that business owner that they're 100% compliant with the ADA, but this at least gets a person with a disability into the door and hopefully can purchase services from them even if there are other issues that doesn't allow them to be 100% accessible. So with that being said, the checklist starts with the parking area. And I'm not going to read through all of these, but basically, well, I suppose I could. If I was going to train you, that's really what it's all about. First question is there dedicated parking for the facility? And if there is dedicated parking for the facility, does it have a path of travel from the parking facility to the facility? And then if yes, it asks you how many spaces are there, how many accessible spaces are there, and then of those accessible spaces, how many are van? How many have upright signs that's designating them as van? How many signs are there, period? Then how many signs designate them as van spaces? Okay, how many van spaces are there? Because a van space is bigger. And that's what this checklist is doing. It's telling you what to look for. Do you have a van space? And then next, are there signs telling you that space is van designated? Parking. Do all the accessible spaces have striped access aisles, meaning a place for a person to get out of their van and nobody's going to park in it? Or is it just another parking space? Is the width of the spaces 16 feet wide? A van parking space, van accessible parking space has to be 8 feet wide with an 8-foot wide access aisle. The car parking spaces only has to be 8 feet wide with a 5-foot access aisle. So this walks us through the chronological order to determine whether or not their parking is accessible in regards to to the width here, and then is accessible parking on the closest and or safest route to the accessible entrance. You know, that's a requirement that it's to be there. It's not often the case when we have existing conditions to facilities that weren't built with ADA parking in mind, and they had to go in and retrofit it later on. A lot of times they place them in areas where there's slopes. So there's a few other things that, you know, we might tweak this checklist on. Looks like the parking stops at that last question. So it doesn't really get into the slopes, which that's fine. We just want to find out, do they have the spaces there? Are the spaces signed? Are they striped? Do they have the right width? From that, we want to know, is the accessible access aisle connected to an accessible route leading to the entrance of the building, as they are required to be? Before I get there, I think I want to talk a little bit more about parking, since I was talking about parking. This kind of gives you the guidelines of, if we find an issue, we identify an issue, you guys would bring this form back to us, and then me and Tim, perhaps it'd be me and Tim, or me and Paula, or somebody, would go out there to the facility, and we would look at their parking lot, and we would go a little bit further and make sure, if we're telling them that their parking isn't 100% compliant, then this is the information that we're going to use, because this is what the regulations are for it. So it's much more than just these few questions. And it's important that you guys know that we're not trying to be the ADA police and tell them that everything has to be 100%. We're just trying to get started here, okay? And get in a business, be able to be a patron at that business, and then leave. Enter safely, exit safely. So, to give you an idea of some of the scoping requirements, that what we would have to do on the second visit to the facilities, we're going to count the parking spaces, we're going to determine if they've got the proper number that's required, based on the scoping requirements table that's shown in this picture up here, and I'm going to describe it. Basically, it's a table telling you if you've got 1 to 25 cars in a parking lot, or parking spaces in a parking lot, that a minimum of one of those spaces has to be accessible parking. If it goes up to 50, you've got to have 2, and et cetera, and so on. Never less than 1 van accessible parking space. So if a facility has to have a minimum of 1 space, it has to be a van accessible space. So that gives you an idea of what we're going to, how we'll go out and continue to help them beyond just telling them, hey, you don't have a striped access aisle. We're going to give them the nuts and bolts, teach them how to create it and create it properly. And if you go to slide 2, Paula, that's still on the scoping requirements. So here's more, so on slide 3, we get into the technical requirements, where we give them the dimensions as to how to build a parking space. And as you can see on the, so on the left, I'm seeing a picture of, and I see you staring at me like this, I'm trying to.
You want our laser pointer?
For what?
He's gonna blind the.
I know, I'm doing a presentation.
But you are doing a video.
You set me up, Paula. I'm kidding. All right, so.
And by the way, that's slide 4, according to your notes.
That's what?
That's slide 4, according to your notes.
It is.
Yeah, see up at the top? So you tell me which one you want.
Okay. I just want you guys to know that we're going to go out there and we're going to technically take care of whatever parking needs they have based on this checklist, but we're going to give them information that's backed by these technical guidelines. I just wanted you guys to know what we're using and how we're coming up with this information. It's not just a 3-page document. So if you go to the next slide, there's just more technical requirements for drop-off, pull-off spaces. So there are some exceptions for a few parking lots that would not be required to have accessible parking, such as a tow truck parking lot. But what they are required to have is an accessible passenger loading zone. So an area where they can bring the car out to you and you've got the same parameters that make up a parking space in an area that's accessible to you. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. And if we go to the next slide, I had some photographs of an accessible parking space that works. This has been constructed properly. This is a van accessible parking space. It has, although now that I'm looking at it, without measuring that, I would question whether that's 16 feet wide there. But theoretically, that's supposed to be an 11-foot wide parking space with a 5-foot wide access aisle there. I can tell the access aisle is not as wide as the parking space. The sign there is 60 inches above finished grade so that you can see where it's at if somebody's parked there. That's kind of an important one as well. If you've got signage out there and it's only 30 inches off the ground and there's a car parked there, you're driving around looking for the accessible parking and it's not there. So the access aisle is connected to an accessible route leading directly to the entrances of the building. and the curb ramp has been installed properly. You enter,
If those are 5-foot panels, they should be.
yes, sir, yes, sir, it needs to be a minimum of 5 feet wide because you're changing directions, so that's what Ed was mentioning, and so that's an example of what I consider a good installation. The next photo is a good attempt. This one has everything right going for it. It's 2 van accessible spaces next to each other with a shared access aisle that's 8 feet wide, but it's not connecting directly to an accessible route leading to the front door. In this picture, the person who parked on the right-hand side would have to travel behind the vehicle parked in the left-hand side to get to the front door. So that's what we're hopeful that, you know, if we're able to help a client or a citizen, a business owner, that we're able to get it done properly and not leave them with a situation that might leave them exposed to liability of some kind. Because it's not 100%.
So the good attempt doesn't count,
Well,
or does it?
it's there, it wouldn't help them in the lawsuit situation, no.
Okay,
But, and unfortunately, but they did try, you know,
yes.
so,
Okay.
It's not signed as van accessible there either, so. Is there, for van accessible, and I know, you know, this is one of the contentious points that we were facing previously. Most vans offload on the right side. So, should there be design requirements for van accessible spots to offload on the right side? As of right now, it's not that way, is that correct?
that's correct. The ADA does not require the access aisle to be on the right or the left side. It says it can be on either side, with the exception of PROAG standards, which is the pedestrian right-of-way accessibility guidelines. That's for guidelines along the streets. That's for the site. The pedestrian bridge is a perfect example of that. The ADA only covers buildings and facilities with property boundaries. Once you're outside those property boundaries, there was no guidelines for anything like our pedestrian bridge. So the pedestrian right-of-way accessibility guidelines covers that, and they do require on-street angled parking only for vans must be on the right side. So if it's on-street 90-degree parking, parallel parking, then it could be either one. But that does make a good point. If it serves our citizens better to have it on the right side, we should probably try to do that. Sure, absolutely.
Everyone knows, that West Lafayette City engineer Dave Peterson has shown the
Yeah, sorry I was late, I came straight from another meeting to this one, so.
Gotta go?
And we'll hit the next picture was a picture that I didn't want to get too much into accessible routes, but, you know, stairs could be part of an accessible route, and in this situation it is. There is a ramp, but here we've got the stairs with the extensions at the tops and the bottoms of the railings, which is what's required there, and it's railings on both sides of the stairs. So that is the requirement, and that's a good example of railings and a stair that complies. The next photo would be pictures of the ramp itself, and it's showing, you know, you're only allowed to have a ramp that rises 30 inches before you have a leg that's level and a resting interval, at least 5 feet wide and or in length, and then this shows the switchback. It shows extension railings at the bottoms of the ramps. It shows continuous railing. The next slide shows continuous railing around the corners. It's a good example. It's got to be continuous even around the corners there for I guess it's almost for wayfinding. It's a good example of the lower bottom rail that's required here for crutch protection, so the crutch doesn't slip out. And then And so, yeah, that's, ramps and stairs are something you're gonna be part of accessible routes, and that's something that, we wanna know a little bit about. You guys need to have a little bit of a baseline about, and this checklist, does touch on some of that. Is the ramp longer than 30 feet? You know, they wanna know that you're not rising more than 30 inches in one run, you know, before we get there. So that's, I don't want to go too much into any more technical stuff. As we progress with this group, I want to add a training component to each and every night that we have a meeting, but I don't want to make it too long and too technical for you guys. So
Where is this picture?
Crawford.
You know, the van accessible spots just on the outside.
Yeah, the van was on the left side. It was in the picture that, yeah. So,
It's interesting that it's, I mean, just an observation that the accessible thing has to be on the right side, or it should be, because, I mean, are you assuming that someone in a wheelchair in a van would not drive, or?
well, I wondered that too, but when we talked with Kevin Props, Props, when he's here, Eric Props, when Eric's Props is here, when he drives, he enters and exits on his passenger side, and he drives. So I think he drives from his chair, and I think most people that drive from their chair, they do enter from the passenger side, typically. I don't want to say that's,
So the passenger seat would be out and coming to the passenger side and go over and then.
a lot of times it's a van, yeah, the driver's seat's taken out a lot of times.
Okay.
And then they just, you know, the ramp is there, I would almost bet you that's how Mr. Props is. But in my case, you know, I mean, and everybody's different, you know, I take my chair apart at the time, put it behind my driver's seat.
Jan, I don't know the specifics behind it, but that's what Jan said. 5%. Don't know where that exact number came from. Sounds like the majority. It's safe to say.
I'm gonna guess that came from the streets program.
And we can also mention
Someone legit.
Okay, I'm gonna jump back in, this is Tim again. Kind of go over, I guess, a brief analogy of what we're trying to do here is, so that part of tonight was obviously from a training standpoint. We've been doing this since 2011, so obviously the more I get involved with this, the more that we're learning and understanding. One of the other things that I'd like to discuss with this is from a training standpoint is we discussed before this meeting started, and that is the Department of Justice asked us as a municipality to reach out to the community and ask questions, and find out what it is that they're looking for when it becomes ADA compliant in situations where visually impaired, hearing impaired, somebody that's in a wheelchair, whatever that disability happens to be. So part of this is tonight too is because the city of West Lafayette is in the process of building 2 brand new buildings, spending a lot of money to do this, is to reach out, and we would like to reach out to you, Dennis, and obviously Melissa, we talked a little while ago because you were in ceramics class today in City Hall. Sit down with you guys outside of this meeting and talk a little bit about the buildings that we're building, and find out what it is that you would be interested in seeing, understanding, giving us your input on what can we do. What can we do in the new buildings to make your life easier? Because we don't understand where you're coming from when you were walking down the hall. Melissa, you made the comment that when you're going down the hall now at City Hall, you hear the HVAC equipment, the air handling unit running when you come by the office. Then you lose that sound going down the hall, then you pick it up in another room, which gives you an idea that you're close to the room that you're going to. You know, what can we do in those type of instances to make things easier for you in a building? Understanding, you know, directional signage, the exit a building, the directional signage, to where you're going inside the buildings, so you have a better understanding of what's going on. We want to be able to reach out to individuals that came with this group. Also understand that part of this group is, you know, if you got the handouts that we have with this, with the sheet that David was talking about, is the screening form itself. If you take this with you and you go out to a certain facility, bring this back to us and we can talk about it, you know. And then at some point, we will go out and talk to business owners and see what we can do to make these things go away for you. Again, this is not a program where we're going out to seek and destroy, so to speak. The whole idea behind this program, as we talked in the first meeting, is to get out to businesses, understand what's going on, inform them of what's going on, and give them an opportunity to, in the program that we have already, is basically 180 days to make some corrections in their facility. And if somebody comes out, we're trying to alleviate the litigation, that before somebody goes out and files a lawsuit, we want them to come to this group. We want them to come to the county, city of West Lafayette, and say, hey, I tried to get into such and such a building, doesn't work for me. Can we go out and talk to them? We go out and talk to the business owner, let them know what, there's the form, it gets filled out, we do a tracking of that information. So it's helping individuals, the citizens out, but it's also helping the business owners out. And that's where we go back to, the end of this is, we have on the table here are yellow stickers. We don't have the sticker itself, we will make the stickers, but it's the Accessibility Coalition of Tippecanoe. It's got the wheelchair in the center of it. It's yellow, bright yellow. If these, when we start going through these buildings and they become compliant, these stickers will then be posted on the windows.
Compliant up to this point with this checklist, which we feel is, you know, I went through most of it, but I'm sorry, I went through the parking part of it, and I think I should continue to go through the rest of it. Compliant in respect to parking, the path of travel, and we're hoping that everybody takes one of these with you. You'll read it when you get home, but there's, 8 questions for the path of travel to find out if it complies. For the entrances and the doors within the facility, we've got, series of 6 questions there. Elevators, stairs, and railings, we've got another 6 questions for that segment. And then common areas, interior and exterior. And then finally, we want to look at the restrooms and the drinking fountains. We've left one space there at the end for general comments. For the last page would be for any other comments that may be relevant that wasn't on this list. But again, the list wasn't meant to be exhaustive for a business owner to think, hey, what the heck are you doing here? Why are you picking on me? We're not picking on them. We're trying to help them. And if they'll listen to us, we'll teach them that not only will they get compliant, but if they're, not only will they start potentially being accessible to people with disabilities for their business, but they can, if they wasn't before, that's potentially an 18% uptick in clientele that they are selling. So, and in addition to that, any monies that they spend, we spend that up to, I think, it's $15,000 a year. There are tax incentives for them to do this. So it may cost them, but then in the end, they'll get to write off except $15,000 each year. And they wouldn't be required. Let's say we found a business that needed kind of a lot. It wouldn't be unheard of. Many questions on this screen. You may find that a business has to do 90% of what we're asking them to do. So we wouldn't expect them to do that in 180 days. We may expect them to do that, to put a transition plan together and suggest that I'll do this much for this many years until I get there. Because we understand, not everybody's going to be able to drop what they're doing. So start addressing issues.
Question, I apologize if this was already discussed. Is there any kind of, other than getting a sticker in the window, and I understand, there's a market, for friendly, whatever it is, whether it's bike friendly or media friendly, what have you. Is there not only the sticker in the window, but a way to keep a list of the ADA friendly businesses and have a distribution list that goes out to anyone that wants that information? I mean, because I think that would be a big incentive for businesses to want to be on that list and all the market share that we might have goes with this.
That's absolutely our intent. Whoever we help and bring through this process, we will keep a list of. And in addition to that, there are some groups out there that's trying to coordinate some informational lists that they would want this information.
They're trying to do an app that will direct you to some of that stuff. We also need to partner with Visit Lafayette, West Lafayette, so that information can be available for on the tourism sites.
That's great.
Are you doing that here locally? Because I know it's happening nationally. I know there's a national group that's trying to do that.
And
So
I'd like to partner with somebody for doing something like that.
Yeah.
Let that be a project.
Yeah, I'm sure some, either college professor will sign up.
it's already out there. There's several
There's a
out
lot
there
of
already.
different apps out there.
Yeah.
We've gone to training in other cities, in larger cities, they've embraced some of that. So we just have to do something like that here locally, but it would be a collective effort, so this is a start.
Yes. That is our goal. That's our hopes. And a year from now, we'll have maybe a list of 5 or 6, and then in 10 years from now, maybe there's a list of
The goal is for Tippecanoe County, West Lafayette, and City of Lafayette to be known as an accessible community worldwide.
Tim, have you tried reaching out to Purdue and their new, I don't know if it's new or not, but the program that's going out now as far as, and discuss some of this that's going on?
We're trying to get them to be part of this program.
As you said, they didn't make it today.
Well, I like the thing, because I go down on your, as you were saying, visiting Lafayette, West Lafayette, sitting down and talking to Joe Wade, and, with your question, is being able to market this distribution list through them, because that's what they do all the time.
And I know marketing is not the intent of this, but marketing is what gets a lot of businesses interested.
Question.
Yes, sir, Dennis?
There's a street light by my house that like chirps. I can tell when to go. I was wondering if there's for any other ones around the city or whatever, that's like a large street or something, because it's pretty helpful. It's right by Jeff High School. I just found out that it helps me be able to cross the street.
Is this street light or is it traffic?
Signal.
It's a signal, yeah.
So it's the auto
Yeah.
pedestrian push button.
What is your address if you don't mind?
2202 Pueblo. I thought there might be some more around the city maybe to help people across the street, because crossing the street is kind of hard for me because I kind of guess I go where the cars go.
As they replace them, they're supposed to all be that way.
Correct, yeah. It's per new standards, but if they have older infrastructure, they just haven't done that yet.
Okay.
But they'll get to it.
Oh, that's super. Okay.
But there is an ADA coordinator in your city that you can call up and make a request. They have this in place, they have the same things in place that the county and West Lafayette has in place too. So there's somebody to call, and you can make a formal request without it being any threatening.
There's also on NDOT's website, a form you can fill out.
I was
Yeah.
gonna say, Teal is an NDOT road still, so they would be the ones to contact on. And they would probably, if you get a hold of the ADA coordinator and discuss your routes and where you're trying to get to and from, they'll probably work towards making that, maybe not right away thing, but kind of a priority project as they start.
And I can get you that information, Dennis. I have the
Yeah.
same information.
Because another thing is, the bus company, I don't know if they are connected with that much, but I go to the YMCA, in that corner, where you have to cross the street, They said they're gonna put a light there, but they never did. And crossing the street there would be terrible for me. I haven't been able to walk because of that. The street where Creasy is,
Yeah, it's,
I haven't talked to the bus company yet, but
from what there was a warrant analysis done for that signal. I can't tell you the reasoning why nothing's ever happened there, but I believe there is a warrant analysis that does warrant putting a signal in place there, so it may just be timing and funding, I'm not sure.
a light or just a signal?
A signalized intersection, which would have ADA accessible detection and then everything else.
So, okay, but it would be a street light.
Yeah, stop
So,
light.
I think we're talking about the same thing.
Stop light, yeah, I'm sorry.
When I hear street light, I assume, something shining over the street.
Yeah, you're right,
Yeah, signal.
Okay.
So you're talking about like a hot signal?
I think it was, from what I understand, and I haven't seen the study, but there was a full, signal warrant done for an actual.
I know that we're going to be doing one with, we're partnering with the city of Lafayette to put one in at the new entrance for our brand new fairgrounds that crosses over Hill Road.
Lafayette, again, that's the state should be put.
Well, they are, but since it's on our side streets and it's going into our little turning lane and drop off lane, we're partnering with them because they're going to maintain it. But yes, the state is going to put it in, they're just gonna charge us.
Okay. That's different. We can get into that debate later.
And I'll back up just a little bit there. Part of this group too is, you talk about the 22 club level. Let us help you. We'll make some phone calls for you as well. To see.
I have a light there with a chirper.
Right.
I was just, mostly, I was concerned too about, the stop area by the Y. And we said they're working on that?
I can't tell you what
Who
it's.
do I-
I'm with West Lafayette, not Lafayette. so-
Oh, okay. Who do I ask them about that too?
That's the city of Lafayette AD coordinator, and I'll give you that information.
Okay. That's a
Absolutely.
big concern.
Reach out.
Thanks.
And
Any
they
other
were invited to this meeting, so.
And that may be the request needed to get them pushed over the limit of get it. Who knows, so. And, your input helps regardless. So just-
I can remember when we first moved here and, we, were trying to just, get around and stuff. There was an intersection in West Lafayette that I filled out form to ask for an audible signal to be put in. And they did it, and then they put in a better one.
Which intersection was that?
What was it,
Nighthawk
Nighthawk
Trail.
and Sagamore,
Yeah.
Nighthawk and
Which,
Sagamore?
that's actually under city control. It's not a city intersection.
Do you have any timing issues with anything in the city now?
Across the street, you mean? I mean, not that I can think of, not currently.
Other than when people at City Hall Park right in front of the stairs.
Hey, they have not done that in like a few months, so.
The summer was rough, huh? When the pool was full, I bet your stair was probably blocked a lot.
She doesn't know this, but I was secretly following her around and fixing areas so I can behind me. You used to live near Montessori School.
Yep.
Yes.
So at that time, we were kind of prioritizing some of our trip hazard review and everything based on areas.
I know, and I feel bad for moving because we were finally making progress on that.
Well, now we hit the whole Shelling neighborhood and Robinson and everything else too, so I'm trying.
That's right.
Because
yeah.
now the
Your office.
neighborhood in Montessori is like not getting priority.
Oh.
I know there's another blind person who lives in the neighborhood though. I just wish that she would say something.
We should invite her
Bring her
to
to
the
this
meeting.
meeting.
Yes, bring her to this meeting.
Is there issues with sidewalk in that community?
Well, we brought some things to you, and you guys did, you addressed it, was when she moved there, like over a year ago.
Yes.
That's,
I mean-
you've already done it.
Yeah, you mean where she's at now, the Shelling area?
Yeah. Like you guys cleared the stairs of the trees. That was super nice. I can find it so easy now. like of all the overgrowth. You know what I'm talking about?
Well, you're just getting all kinds of feathers in your hat.
There was a 40-year-old mulberry tree that had grown through the railing of the stairs,
Yeah,
so you couldn't even hold onto the rail without.
no, you can only go up one side of the stairs.
Well, I'm pretty impressed, so
We cater to our community. We try.
say that louder.
I just wish I could move in a lot of places, and then you could, like.
Yeah. It came with the caveat, you have to stay where you're at for the next 5
Exactly,
years.
you're like, yeah, just stay there now.
And we'll be resurfacing the roads there next year.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
I was wondering if you knew approximately how many businesses in Lafayette, West Lafayette today would be qualifying for the sticker, kind of just to say, see how much opportunity there was out there.
I can't say how many that I would say there are at this point. I can say that there's a huge opportunity for a lot of people to be successful. A lot of the new buildings that we're doing in West Lafayette, they're already there.
Yeah.
You know, so, I know TV 18 was talking nice about being here, and they want to do a follow-up from this meeting to say, you know, we have some buildings that are already accessible, we want to do a sticker for one of those facilities, that they would like to be there to do some building of that while we're doing that. So, I can't speak for Lafayette, I know about West Lafayette, the newer stuff, through the engineering department, building inspections, and with David's help from the ADA consulting side, reviewing the plans before they're building these things, we're catching a lot of this stuff before they're building at this point, so.
Or making them rip it out in the back end.
Right.
So,
Which has happened.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Did you evaluate walks on the west side?
We have not, from a standpoint of somebody's brought us a complaint form, we have, just as David and I were out there one day, and we did
We went for the ribbon cutting.
Yes.
We were there with the entire city, so we didn't bring it up that way.
there's issues that need to be addressed.
There are issues with walls.
Well, I know that I know in some ways, like, because I had talked about, like, I wrote a Google review for them. It wasn't like a glowing one, unfortunately.
Did they use it?
But they did, they answered the questions, you know, I mean, they answered it right away and said, oh, we can accommodate this, we can accommodate that. Like, the business owner responded to the review. So I'm wondering if, you know, he, I think it's he, would be willing to, I mean, it doesn't say if the owner is he or she, you know, if they would be willing to actually work with that, because they have a room, like, if noise is an issue for people with autism, and they said they could, you know, brighten the lights if you had a hard time reading the menu, someone did. I mean, everyone at the table I was sitting with, like, it's so dark in here. And someone had to actually pull out her cell phone and turn on the flashlight to read the menu.
I've been there.
Candidate for further.
And so I was like, I said, you know, and so I have written all that on there, so, anyway.
That's interesting, I think that would be something that would be nice to be able to go back and do a follow-up from what you've written to, what the responses have been. I know that we looked at parking, we looked at the path of travel, they have issues that need to be addressed.
was parking an issue there?
They just forgot to put the signage up. They just failed to put the signage up. Accessible routes were pretty good.
Well, it's leads you through the back door, right?
Yeah.
Right. Which is, and just from a overall view, that's just the forest statement. You should
Which is better though, having an accessible route in the back door, or having it in the middle of your parking lot, like in the school corporation building?
You're not licensed one at the school?
It's right in the middle of the
No
parking
sidewalk
lot,
to
there's no sidewalk to it.
Well, it is, but we had them raise it up, so it's like a giant parking cart. What's the name?
Well, no, she's talking about,
Like at the building next to City Hall.
yeah,
All the administration goes.
she's
Yes.
talking about which,
Oh,
that's an old building that probably won't have much more service.
I thought you were talking about the new one.
No, Yeah, she's not talking about Willis, she's talking about.
Okay, yeah, I thought
existing,
Willis.
so, and that's,
No, Willis is fine.
Okay, good. I was gonna say, I might check that one, and I went out there with Chad on that, but then we looked at that.
but again, you're talking about a building that was built in the sixties or seventies that has just never been retrofitted.
I just thought it was kind of, I was like, oh, welcome to the school corporation. Well, you know. Anyway, I'm
Imagine
sorry.
that'll be a future.
It was
project.
ironic.
Well, the discussion we made at this point is building the building. Any questions?
I would suggest maybe, visit Waltz again. And, I mean, I don't know if the owner responded, let him be your first guy.
Okay.
Since our first meeting, we visited West Lafayette Country Club. So I had an issue where I wasn't able to access,
Oh, that's
the
right.
pro shop with my daughter. So we had a visit out there. And I wasn't able to have the meeting the day we went out there, but we made contact and had a discussion with the owner, and we're going to follow up and going to try to see if there's other areas we can help him with. Right now, all I know is that the pro shop's not, it's not. Sure, there's other things. Again, the whole sticker program is not to say you're 100% compliant, but to say you're at least this compliant enough that you can get in and out, spend your money, bring your family, have a good time, and go back with it. We've also got another handout for you guys to take home and read through. It kind of goes all in parallel with our checklist. It's not an exhaustive list of do's and don'ts, but it kind of goes through the same things that we're going to be looking at. This is the do's and don'ts of an example of errors and omissions with construction in regards to ADA requirements and parking. It shows a diagram of accessible parking spaces with a shared access aisle that's connected directly to an accessible route. And it talks about the omission where, when that's not there, it can be dangerous. So that's a general construction error that happens. So we'd like for you to look through these. Curb ramps located out there within the access aisle, not within the not within the sidewalk itself. That's an error, that was an afterthought, it's never allowed to be there. Although I sometimes argue it seems to me like it'd be better that it's there than just not there at all, but not compliant is not compliant. It doesn't see that. Either it is or it isn't. We don't have grades of compliance. So just read through this when you have time, and I would suggest reading through this before you read your screening form and take it to a facility to do the test. But we just want to kind of slowly get into that, not slowly, but ease into this without inundating you guys with too much technical information that it's no fun for you.
So to wrap up, a couple of things that I just want to do from a follow-up standpoint, and I'd like to sit down and follow with you and sit down with Joe Wade and visiting Lafayette, West Lafayette, come up with some ideas. Do follow up with Purdue and Ivy Tech. Obviously, continue to follow up with Lafayette to try to get them involved with this program as well.
Get with Greater Lafayette Commerce as well, they should be involved. They are somewhat affiliated with Visit Lafayette, West Lafayette, they're different. They have a lot of influence on a lot of business right here.
The Chamber of Commerce. Remember that one?
Great Lafayette Commerce.
Yeah.
It's no longer the Chamber of Commerce.
No,
Oh, it's not.
it's same,
Same thing, but it's just they got the Chamber.
Oh, okay.
So we'll deal with those. We'll do a follow-up on all that. The next thing is what do we want? We need to set up another meeting. All the information we have today, I'm going to send out an email to everybody so they have the same information that you pick up here.
You think we'll get more attendance if we do it quarterly?
Yes, I mean, that was the idea, we're just gonna do this quarterly, but the first one was kind of a kickoff, and then this one was supposed to be a, let's get into a little bit of training and get everybody to understand what we're looking at. My suggestion at this point, because we're the 17th of September, that we really don't do another meeting until we get into January, because we're getting into holiday season. Nobody's gonna want to come in November or December. I think that October is way too early. January is kind of a little bit late, but we're not going to get anybody in November, December. So I would say the latter part of January, if we look at the latter part of January, to have the next meeting. But also, we need to talk about a time, because the question is, at 6 o'clock, people, do they go home from work, or do they stick around before they go home? I know that a lot of people, once they get home from work, the last thing they will say is they're going to go back out. So,
About lunch. About lunch. And we cater it or something. I don't know. I say we, I say we, and I know you're gonna be.
Attendance usually goes up for those meetings.
That would be
Yeah.
correct. You get more people that way, yes.
We can do it at here, at Lily Nature Center or something like
Or
that.
maybe you find an ADA friendly business that wants to donate
Like
Well,
that.
that idea.
When you bring up the chamber, Greater Lafayette Chamber,
to.
I
I bet
would
they would
say,
be happy to host the first one.
and I think we give them this checklist. I think they need a preface in the email of what this group is, to suggest, hey, we're not a bunch of people that's just gonna come after you and say you've gotta become compliant. There's an end goal to this, and that end goal allows them to sell to 80% more people potentially than they are right now. There's tax incentives, and then they'll have the sticker. And
I have
we
to
give
say,
them the chance to go through their own facility. If they're in Greater Commerce Chamber, then they probably want to do their own.
They definitely make it fun.
you know, if you keep throwing out data, you keep throwing out the 18%, I know the last I saw was 88%, 1 in 5 people have a disability, which is, you know, we'll go with the 18%, but I have to say it's more than 18%, because, you know, with the water shop sitting across the room, you've got a family of 4, and only one of them has a disability, so you're losing the business of 4 people and not just 4.
Yeah.
So that number is really higher than
It's a lot higher
18%.
with intellectual disabilities, now that ASB is so prevalent,
Right.
it's a lot
So-
higher.
So to
What he's saying
clarify,
is, it's the 1 in 5 plus their
Right.
immediate family.
There you go.
Yeah,
18% is those considered to have mobility disabilities.
right.
That was the last
Right.
published on that, but so you're right.
But, you know, we were, you know, a little
Every 5 sounds like a better number to advertise.
So again, so I'm hearing that if we were to do something at noon, you know, in our approach to visiting Lafayette, West Lafayette, I think that we could get them to eat, because they do a breakfast once a month, that we could get them to do luncheon for us, we do it here, wherever we do it.
You're welcome to do it here, I can come up with a time for that.
So I'm hearing that let's move this to noon, quarterly meeting, so we'll start in January. Let's go to the calendar, so.
But try to have the mission statement by then.
Well, the mission statement by then, so please look at January. If we're gonna continue to do this on a Tuesday, the 7th is out, it's too close to the beginning of the year, people are just trying to get back into the swing of things, because New Year's Day is a Wednesday, so. I'm gonna say probably the 21st or the 28th.
14th, would you have, is it Martin Luther King Day in January?
That's the 20th. Yes, that's the 20th of January. So we do the 20, my suggestion is the 21st or the 28th. Anybody have any personal preference towards the latter part of the month, middle of the month? We want to say the 3rd Tuesday of every month, just to make it a quarter.
November.
Sounds good to me.
3rd Tuesday of the quarter. So we're gonna say the 21st at noon. Paula, if you can tell us, is this one
I
available?
don't know that, because I don't have a calendar, I have the calendar, but I
So
don't have the
tentatively-
actual.
Not that far
I
out.
can't think of any meetings that, well, the traffic commission, but that's evenings.
We'll see. We're talking about doing this at noon, so. Tentatively, we're gonna say the 21st until we hear back from Paula, if that's gonna be, if this room is available.
Or if there's another location we can have.
Any other questions?
Just not missing out.
No, it's-
Not in
it's a
Seattle.
meeting. Well, thank you guys very much for coming. We appreciate it. I know this is, again, we're still at the very beginning stages of this, but I think that when we come back in this thing in a year, 2 years, 5 years down the road, how this thing is gonna grow for everybody is